Well, they say that you're a fool. You believe in magic.
I'm Paranormal Pete, and I'm on a journey to seek answers to the questions that have crossed all of our minds. What happens to us when we die? Is there an afterlife? I'm a regular guy who discovered the gift of psychic mediumship in my 30s. My passion for history and the unknown have put me right here, right now. My mantra for anything paranormal is, we don't know much and anything is possible. Join me as we find our way through the stories, evidence, and experiences of the paranormal and beyond in search of answers, even if that leads to more questions. Are you with me?
Some hocus pocus filling up inside.
Hey there, greetings. Welcome to the Paranormal Pete Show. I'm your host, Pete Orbea. We're on WLTKDB.com. In case you forget, it's right behind me here, if I can point in the right direction. WLTKDB.com. I invite you and strongly encourage you to go through the website. Station manager Todd Bates has been going through and doing some really cool things with it, so I hope you go check it out. And while you're there, be sure you check out all the other shows that are on the station. There's a lot of shows now. There's a lot of really cool content coming out each week. So if you like this show, you're going to like the other shows. So please go check out all the other shows, WLTKDB.com. You can also find us on Facebook or YouTube or Twitch, or I think Twitter still, but just look up WLTKDB and you'll find us there on the socials. And if you want to follow my page, it's facebook.com/Paranormal Pete Show. So definitely check those out. I always want to give a big shout out to Todd and Sherry, station owners. Todd's on the ones and twos in the background there, making this whole world work. So appreciate that. And of course, friend of the show and producer Mike Beers for all the work that he does on the show. Really appreciate it. Got some really cool shows coming up, starting with tonight, kicking off June with a bang. We got special guest, psychic medium Kelly Palmatier, coming in tonight. She's on the East Coast, so we thank her for staying up late tonight. And this Thursday, I'm going to be a guest on Chat with Charlie right here on WLTKDB.com, and it's on Thursday mornings. If you're on the West Coast, it's going to be an early bird. I'll be on at 7 in the morning here, 9 Central. So new show here on the station. So show your support and watch it and comment. And of course, on this show, always encouraging people to comment. Let us know you're watching. Say hey. And then, of course, throughout the show, please ask questions. It's a lot of fun when we get questions from the audience and to see, we put the guest on the spot and see what they say. No, it's just a lot of fun to get questions. So send them in as we go along. So got psychic medium Kelly Palmatier tonight. Next week, another WLTKDB show host is going to be on, Christina Bloom from Be the Change. The week after that, I've got Paranormal Perception Show host and owner Henry San Miguel coming on, and we'll be talking about the OC Paracon. And also, he said he's got some really good haunted Disney stories that I think we're going to share, because the conference is right at Disneyland this year. So he's got some really cool ghost stories about Disneyland, ones that he said that you probably haven't heard before from people he knows. So should be pretty interesting. And then the week after that, I've got filmmaker Randall Nickerson. He's got a film about the Ariel Project and the mass UFO sighting in Africa at the school, where virtually everybody there had an experience. So I look forward to talking with him about his film and just the whole incident in general. It's going to be really interesting. And then I'll be announcing some guests for July very soon. I've got some exciting ones coming up. So keep your eyes on my show page. It's usually where I put it out there. I've got ghost walks coming up this summer for the first time ever. I'm doing them in the summer, see what happens. I've got a youth ghost walk coming up on June 18th for Father's Day weekend, and it's appropriate for ages 7 and older. And I've got some late night investigations, public investigations coming up, and some late night regular ghost walk tours. So for all the dates, times, and details, head on over to portgambleparanormal.com and you can see all that stuff there. You'll also find information for the Port Gamble Ghost Conference, and that's at portgamble.com, but you can get there from my website. That's coming up. It's going to be the 13th annual. So I hope that's good luck. Lucky number 13. 13th annual conference, and it's so fun to put that on. It's November 11th through 13th, and we're holding it in the historic Port Gamble Theater that was opened in 1906. And that theater space itself is really interesting and just has an interesting vibe to it. So it's always fun to do the conference in there. And I mentioned the OC Paracon, Orange County Paracon, coming up October 1st and 2nd. I'm super excited to get to be a speaker and a panelist, and I'll have a vendor table as well. So stop by and say hello, and I'll be offering mediumship and tarot readings. So if you're feeling froggy, come by and say hello at the conference, and I'll see you there. So you can go to ocparacon.com. And anybody out there who really likes, I always put this out there, there's a conference that you go to that you really like and want people to know about, go ahead and comment it, and we'll give it a shout out here. And because it's important to get all that information out there. Conferences are so great for meeting people. We got Sherry saying good evening, hello, thanks for watching. And so yeah, wherever you're at, say hello, wherever you're commenting from, and or if you're listening, hey, if you like the audio version of stuff and you don't want to see my ugly mug every week, that's totally fine. Just go to the station website and you can get all of the audio podcast, or wherever you get your wherever you like to get your podcast from. Just look up again WLTKDB right there, and you'll find us and all the other shows. So it's not just my show, but all the other ones too. Well, I'd like to introduce our special guest tonight. Psychic medium Kelly Palmatier is known primarily for her psychic and mediumship work, offering psychic and mediumship readings to the public. Although she was born a psychic, she actively developed her skills over several decades, including studying parapsychology at the University of Kent in Canterbury, England. Dedicated to making the world a better place, she regularly donates readings to those in need, hosts charity fundraisers, and volunteers as a hospice worker. She named her company and YouTube channel Channeling White Light as a metaphor for making a difference in the world. She and her husband live in beautiful Asheville, North Carolina. Let's welcome special guest Kelly Palmatier to the show. Woohoo!
Hi, thank you for
Hey.
having me.
Thanks for coming on. This is great. And it looks like Sherry's coming in from Minnesota tonight. So hopefully it's warming up there because it's been cold in Seattle. I don't know. How's it been in your neck of the woods there?
It's nice here. Yeah, beautiful sunshine. I'm sorry, was I not supposed to tell you that?
You can. It's fine. We actually had a nice day here. We've been really inundated with the Seattle gray
Yeah.
this spring, so we haven't had too much sun. But
Yeah,
happy to have you here.
Yeah.
Coming all the way from North Carolina, and tell us a little bit about channeling white light and just anything else that you want to say about yourself before we get going here.
All right. Well, yeah, Channeling White Light is the name of my company. And basically what I do is I say I'm channeling white light towards a better world. So it's really about trying to make a difference. You know, for the majority of my life, I always felt like there was something I was supposed to be doing to help others. And I just wasn't doing it. I mean, I was, trying to be a nice person, but I just had like a regular corporate job, and I didn't feel like I was really following my path. And then finally, when I became a medium and I started offering these services professionally, and people started telling me about how I'm bringing them so much inner peace that they haven't had in years, it really resonated. And so Channeling White Light is about making a difference in the world.
Wow, that's cool that you kind of, felt signs that you weren't doing what you were supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of hard to fight those, right? I feel kind of similar in certain ways there, that once,
Yeah.
I discovered this gift that had always been there. I just didn't know what it was, but
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of, I guess I come from maybe a different perspective of, it was kind of a relief to go, oh, maybe there is something else that I'm supposed to
Mm-hmm.
do. And so
Yeah.
it's neat to kind of find that. And that's really cool that you found it. We got someone else checking in. Oh, host of Chat with Charlie. And good evening, Pete. Charlie Lynn, thanks for watching, and we'll see you Thursday morning. So now, in your bio, you said that you're born a psychic. Did you always know? Did you always, as a kid? I always like to ask about the
Yeah.
childhood experience, and if that's okay,
Yeah.
what was it like for you?
Yeah, so I feel like I've been psychic my whole life. And for me, I did have a few little experiences as a child that in hindsight make me understand that I was psychic my whole life. But as an actual child, I didn't know what was normal, what wasn't normal. It was just sort of an experience that I had, and that's just the way it is. It was one of my earliest experiences as a psychic. Is I was sitting with my older sister Lee. She was 4.5 years older than I, and she was doing a card trick for me. It was one of these pick a card, any card, and I'll tell you which one you picked. So I chose a card, and she made a great display of concentrating before she proclaimed what card I had chosen. And my 4.5 year younger self, I was probably about, I think maybe 6 years old. I was delighted with my big sister's trick, and I said, "Oh, let me try." And so I tried it with her, and I told her the Four of Hearts, and her jaw just dropped, And so it was one of those deals where suddenly I realized that it was not a real thing where she had like concentrated and figured it out, that it was a show, it was a trick, and that what I was doing, what I had done, was not normal. So I couldn't immediately duplicate it, but it was just little things like that throughout my childhood that made me understand that there was something there. In fact, when I was 8 or 9, I ended up channeling my great great grandfather and gave my parents a message that my mom was going to get a job that she had applied for in Atlanta, which was 400 miles away from us at the time, and that we should start looking for a house. And so all that came to pass. But it's funny because I still didn't really consider myself a medium. I just kind of thought, oh, that was interesting.
That was weird.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, in fact, it was I just became a medium about 5 years ago. So it happened where, again, I've been psychic, and I have actively worked at developing my psychic skills all throughout high school and college. And you read in my bio how I studied parapsychology at University
Yeah.
of Canterbury in England. So I've been actively pursuing the psychic thing for decades, but it was just 5 years ago I was sitting at a waterfall, and I was getting in touch with nature and spirit, praying, meditating, and I asked for guidance. I said, I've always wanted to make a difference in the world. If there's something I can do to help others that I'm not already doing, please give me a sign. And I was expecting something subtle, a friend loans me a book, or something like that. But what I got instead was a direct message from spirit right then on the spot that I should learn to become a medium. And I was, surprised that I got such a direct answer on the spot that didn't seem to follow the normal flow of my train of thought. So I knew it was a message. And I, I'd seen the TV shows and whatnot, so I knew what a medium did, but I just didn't think that was me. So I asked, okay, how shall I do this? And I got a direct message right then: read books, spend time in meditation, connect with other psychics and mediums. So I started doing all of that right away, and by the end of the month, I was channeling.
That's awesome. Do you know? I mean, now that after some time has progressed, do you know who the message came from?
I don't know for sure. I kind of attribute it to my team
Okay.
of guides.
Yeah.
I definitely know that my mother was involved because she passed almost 10 years ago, and she, other than my grandmother when I was a teenager, my mother's passing was the first very significant loss for me from the
Okay.
physical world. And it was after my mother's passing is when I first started to perceive the change in physical density of the energy around me when she was there. I had
Okay.
multiple experiences with her, but again, I never thought of myself as a medium, even with that, because I thought, well, this is a psychic thing, and it's just because it's my mother,
Yeah.
not
Right.
realizing that it's all interconnected.
Right. And that's something that I think you just keep learning and learning more about.
Mhm.
And we can't stop learning. We got a couple people checking in here. We got Angel and Sandra. Hello from Asheville.
Oh, hello. That would be, my friend Sandra. It's delightful to see you here.
Yeah, thanks for watching, you
I'm,
guys. And
I'm going to say hi, Santa,
okay.
because Sandra is a friend that I met through the Asheville Santa Con.
Oh,
We
nice.
dress up in crazy holiday costumes.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, hello, Santa.
Yeah, right?
That's great. Well, thanks for watching, you guys.
Yeah.
And Sherry's commenting, as a former nurse, I always felt it was a privilege to be at a birth of a baby or a death of an elderly patient.
Mhm.
And I'm glad you felt that it was an honor and not a burden. That's great. Says, hello, darling. Yes, Santa. Thanks for watching, you guys.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about your studies of parapsychology.
Mhm.
What was what what were you going to learn? Like, what was the thing you were going, like, I'm going to learn this. I want to learn about this. What was that topic for you?
Well, I really loved everything about parapsychology. It really spoke to me. Though, to be able to take something that is so nebulous, because the very definition, the paranormals, to take something like that and then to be able to scientifically document things about it, for me, that's really fascinating. I mean, it didn't turn out to be my niche, but even now, as a medium, for me, it's vitally important that I am an evidential medium. To be able
Right.
to come up with solid evidence. How a spirit's appearance, their personality, how they passed, and I actually fairly often these days get exact names, which is my favorite. I love
I,
getting exact names.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
really it makes me feel relieved when someone says, "Oh yeah, that's their name."
Yes. Yes. It's like, oh, yeah. Yeah, exact names, and for me, one of my favorites is exact double names too. Like,
Oh, what do you mean by a double name?
well, like a combination. Like, for example, when I first started doing mediumship work, I even, I told you that it was like within a month I was channeling, but even then it just felt too easy, and I doubted myself. I'm like, is this my wishful thinking? Am I getting lucky? You know? And one day I was doing a reading for this family, and I said to them, is there a Ray or a Roy? And everybody in the room gasped. His name is Roy Ray. And I was like, holy wow, I'm really doing this, like that double name. And since then, I was channeling someone and I got a Brandon Kent. You know,
Okay.
that was,
Wow.
yeah. So that was a good one. And then there was one time where I was channeling for a large group, and the grandmother asked. It was her son who had passed, and she was wondering about her granddaughter, the son's daughter, and so she said, "Who does he want to raise his daughter?" And I tuned in and I spoke to the spirit, and I answered Carol Ann. So again, a double name. Turns out Carol Ann was there in the room with everybody. And once I said her name, everybody just howled. Turns out she's the maternal one, the mother figure in the group.
That's
So just
awesome.
those double names for me, that's double the fun. Getting an exact name.
Right. Just like the double spearmint. Right
There
on.
you go.
That's and to get that validation, um, as you were developing skills and everything, have you found that, like when you get a double name, And does it feel different? Does it feel like you get it on like one side or the other? Or you know what I mean? Like how does it come in
Yeah.
and how do you recognize it, I guess?
Yeah, I do. That's a great question. And you know what? That's the type of question that I would expect from a fellow psychic medium.
Okay.
You know, that's because it's true that the little nuances of the energy are subtle but solid.
Right.
So when I first became a medium, and even now, I have to say I'm much stronger on my left side. My
Okay.
left side is much stronger at receiving than my right side. And for me, I'm talking more specifically about clairsentience, where you're talking about the physical, where I feel the physical density of the energy, or like if spirit touches me, you know,
Yeah.
that. So for me, it's stronger on my left side. I still get it on my right side, but it's if I'm getting something that is neutral, like for example, they had a problem with their knees and it's plural, I'll just feel it on my left knee. Like so that's one thing. But now when it comes to names, that is more it I use a combination of the clairs, but for the most part, names are more for me the clairaudience because I'm going to hear it more. And when I'm
Okay.
getting clairaudience, for me, that's a little more on my right side and it's a little more head oriented. And it just
Okay.
kind of pops into my head.
Interesting. Well, I'm glad that, you know, you can point to certain things because I think that's kind of a tricky part when you're starting out is recognizing what feels what way,
Yeah.
and it's about getting the validation and noting, okay, I felt this way when this was validated. So that's
Yeah.
kind of a hard process to get
Well,
through.
it is. And, you know, the first couple years that I worked as a medium, I didn't have strong symbols. You know,
Okay.
you know, so many mediums will talk about my symbol for this. I see you waving for other people, but every time you do that, I'm like, hey. So anyway, I didn't have my symbols in place, and I was, you know, I continue to study and read and practice and constantly work at trying to improve my
Yeah,
skills. But
right.
there's a particular book for people who are just starting out as a medium, or even people that just want to improve their mediumship skills. One of my favorite books is "So You Want to Be a Medium" by Rose Van Den Eden, and in her book. Uh, that was the one that really got me into working through the symbols. And so for me, like a symbol, I and you probably do this as well, but just for people who don't know, a medium comes up with symbols that work for him or her. So it's not like a universal language, but like in my case, I'm going to take, for example, whether or not a spirit passed suddenly or they were a more prolonged passing. And so if somebody, I developed my own symbols for this by saying, well, visually, what's a symbol for something that is prolonged? And I thought of these old toys, the Stretch Armstrong. You know, you could pull those arms. It's like, you
Yeah.
know. And so I thought, okay, well, so if someone passed in a way that's more prolonged, I'm going to visually, with my clairvoyance, I've gotten to visually see the Stretch Armstrong doll, or I want to feel something in my arms, you know, like
To
I'm
make you
stretching,
feel like you're
right? I feel
stretching,
something in
right?
my arms. So it turns out that that's one of the symbols I created. And then the other one I said, and conversely, if someone passed more suddenly, I'm either going to see someone, you know, see the image of someone snapping, like something really fast, or I'll feel something in my hand, you know, like I'm,
Like a
yeah. So
some
so
sort of
now
pop, yeah.
that has, it turns out I like developed and I talked to my spirit guides. I'm going to try this out, and now I actually almost never, I can't, even though I came up with those visual symbols, for me the clairvoyance is not quite as strong as the clairsentience, the physical touch. So I almost always will just feel it in my arms or feel something in my hand, and I'll be like, sudden, they pass suddenly, you know?
That's so cool. That
Yeah.
yeah, that I love the development of symbols
Yeah.
and you know, I think I'm doing that subconsciously
Uh-huh.
or not consciously doing that. But hey, we got to take a quick station break here. And I got a great question to come back with from Charlie Lynn. When we come back from the break, we're here on WLTKDB. We're on the Paranormal Pete Show with special guest, psychic medium Kelly Palmatier from Channeling White Light. And we'll be right back here. Stick around. We'll see you in just a minute.
Brandon Wainwright is an animal lover, author, energy healer, and former police officer. In April of 2018, he and his family lost their dog Tyson to a brain tumor. It was an inevitable experience that comes with being a pet owner, but it was devastating nonetheless. Tyson's Gift: How an 8-pound canine became a man's greatest spiritual guide. In the story of Tyson's life, from his entry into the lives of Brandon and his wife Misha, to his equally impactful departure and continued spiritual influence, Tyson's beautiful story will entertain and comfort readers of all backgrounds. Get your copy at tysonsgift.com. That's tysonsgift.com, or wherever books are sold.
All right, welcome back to the Paranormal Pete Show. Quick break. Looks like an interesting book to check out. But we're here on WLTKDB.com and all over the socials. Just look up WLTKDB. And we're here with Kelly Palmatier from Channeling White Light. And we got a good question coming back. We were just talking about symbols and using symbols to kind of understand and receive your messages. And you were kind of talking about how you made your own. You had to figure out what worked for you and make your own. And so Charlie's asking, have you found that your symbols changed, deepened, or have also developed with your abilities?
Yeah, that's a great question. So absolutely, my symbols continue to develop. So the one I just talked about, whether or not someone passed in a way where they were sick for a while before they passed, or they passed suddenly, that developed because, you know, I set those intentions that it would be either visual or physical, and it just every time it just goes to the physical. So that's one way that the symbol developed. But other times I'll get symbols that develop as a way of receiving what spirit is telling me. So like the one I just said is I set the symbol, but in other times spirit has given me the symbol instead. So for example, let's talk about diabetes. There were several times early on in my mediumship work where I felt a sensation in my lower legs, like my feet coming up into my legs. And I would describe this to my client because it was a new experience. I didn't have a symbol for it yet. I would describe it to my client. I'm feeling something in my feet or lower leg. And oh yes, Grandpa lost his feet due to diabetes. And then I would get that a few different times until finally, when I started to feel something in my lower legs or feet, I would ask my client, I'm saying, you know, I'm getting something like in my knees. This could be something literal, the knees, or it could be diabetes. And I get, oh yes, he had diabetes. So for me, like that is a symbol that has developed over time. So now a lot of times I'll feel something physically in my knee, and I'll say to my client, I'm getting my symbol, this could be diabetes. And they're like, yes, diabetes.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. Have you noticed, as you've gone along and your abilities grow and you put the time into it, do you, and Charlie says, thank you.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Good question. Do you think how you get information has changed, and is that evolving as well the more you do things? Meaning, you know, you talked about you know, the clairsentient or the feeling, the touch, you know, do you feel like you get your information differently now than you did 5 years ago?
Yeah, absolutely. It's constantly evolving, constantly evolving. Like, you know, I remember in the early days when I was trying to get names, I would try and go through the alphabet in my head, with my client there. I'm like, close my eyes, I'm breathing deeply, and I'm like, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, and like hearing, trying to get my clients to my spirits to kind of pull me in a direction of a letter. I don't do that anymore. These days, I'll just ask my spirit, give me a name, give me a letter, and then I'll just kind of intuitively feel it, and then I'll say I'm getting the letter M or MAR.
Yeah. And right. So and I think that's right on. And I had met you at the Oregon Ghost Conference
Yeah.
this year and saw your presentation and just thought everything you were saying was like stuff that I have or am experiencing, and
Mhm.
things to look for in a reading. And um have you I've got a fun question next, but what what's your take on, or your experience in readings with there's the term earthbound, or somebody who has moved forward, moved on to the light. What's been your experience with that, and what's your opinion on that from your experience about earthbound spirits versus those who have gone to the proverbial light?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would have to say, for me, I feel like I don't really use that classification so much. And I'm not going to say that it's not real or doesn't exist. I don't want to knock it because, like you said in the intro of the show about, I forget your exact quote, but something to the effect, one of my favorite quotes is, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. So I'm
Yeah.
not claiming to be an expert on this, but for me, I don't really use the term earthbound because I kind of feel like once you're in spirit, you're free. Now, I do acknowledge that there are different levels of spiritual advancement on the other side. So
Okay.
I feel like there are some spirits that when I'm channeling them, it's just like, oh, the angels are singing, and I can just tell that they're in their element and they're free and their energy is expansive. Um, and then there are other times when I'm channeling a spirit and I'm like, this spirit is learning, this spirit is growing.
Yeah. And how does that feel to you? What's the difference between the and the and the ones that are learning? Like, how does it feel different to you?
It's a lightness, a joy. Yeah. The
Yeah.
vibration is a higher vibration and it just feels very fresh and light. It's funny. It actually reminds me of a fun story. I don't know if you have a time for me
Go
to get off
go
track.
ahead. Yeah,
I know you've
go
got a fun
ahead.
question coming up, or so I hear.
Yeah.
But yeah, I actually had a situation years ago where in a mediumship session, I channeled the Blessed Mother Mary. I kid you
Okay.
not.
Okay.
I was shocked by it myself, but and wouldn't have believed it if it hadn't been backed up by evidential information. So what happened was I had this lovely couple came and sat down with me, and I started channeling for them. And right away I was getting hits. I talked about their young son who had died in a drowning accident from it, having hit his head. And then after that, I said, oh, and now I'm picking up on my symbol for a mother. So I know we've got a mother with him. But at this point, I knew that physically his mother and father were sitting with me. So this couldn't be the boy's mother. So I wasn't sure who the mother was. But anyhow, I got my symbol for mother and I told that to them and they just nodded yes. And so then I said, oh, I'm getting the name Mary. I got the name Mary. And they both said, yes, that's correct. And so I'm thinking, great, okay, good, I'm getting hits. And then I asked them, so how does this make sense? Who is the mother? Because I'm thinking, is it the lady's mother? Is it the father's mother? Whose mother is it?
Yeah.
And they said to me, it's the Blessed Mother Mary. And I, of course, thought, oh, really?
Okay.
And then they proceeded to tell me that they had seen or spoken to another medium on the phone before, and that medium had told them that their son was with the Blessed Mother Mary. And they also told me that they had been praying for their son to be with the Blessed Mother Mary. So that's two validations right there. And once they told me that, that allowed my little brain to say, oh, okay, maybe it is Blessed Mother Mary. And then at that point, she let me feel her energy. And it
Yeah.
was, oh,
Interesting.
that high vibration,
Yeah.
expansive, unconditional love. It's
Yeah.
pretty awesome.
Well, it sounds like, once you kind of let your own self, let your own self.
My own skeptical brain set aside.
Right. And that probably is from part of your studies in parapsychology, keeping that
Mhm.
skeptical part in there. But
Yes.
once you kind of, I don't want to say give into it, but once you accept,
Yes.
and trust is
Uh-huh.
the word. Once you
Yes.
trust, because that's the hardest part. It's a hard thing to get over, trusting what you're getting and not interpret
Mhm.
not
Absolutely.
interpret what you see.
Yes.
So my fun question is, and I ask a lot of people this, and because it's interesting, answers are interesting, but my lovely wife Molly asks often, well, where are the spirits?
Mm.
Where are they?
Yeah.
So what's your take on that? Where?
Here's one. Here's one. There's one. Hello. Hi.
All around then.
They definitely the energetic world is, we live in an energetic world. It's just that the density is affects our perception, you know?
Yeah.
So I definitely feel that spirits are all around us. Now, I don't feel that all of the spirits are around us at all the time, but it's definitely not something like everybody's, sitting on a cloud in the sky.
Right. I think they can travel too. It's just kind of,
Mhm.
it's interesting to try and think about, they are energy, but it is some sort of a physical sense in itself, the energy itself. And so it's like, yeah, well, where is it? And I kind of think too, yeah, it's all around and they're not
Mhm.
always around, but they come and check around. And I don't know if you've had in your mediumship readings, but what I get shown a lot is I'll either see a photograph of something that was important to the person or an object. And to those objects to me always kind of come through, and how I understand it is those are like a beacon for the spirit. And like, so what do you think about this? I mean, this has just been what my experience is so far is, a lot of times old timer guys will show me their old tackle box, and, I'll see it in its present state. And it's usually in a box in the garage or a bin or something like that. But they want it brought out because that helps them to find their way to where they need to go. Have you had any experiences
Mhm.
with that where you get shown an object that meant something to that person? I mean, that's just been my experience. Do you see
Yeah.
objects and, objects that they
Yeah.
left behind that were real important?
Yeah, so I definitely see objects. But for me, when I see the object, it's more about a validation that I'm picking up on, details from their lives that I couldn't have otherwise known. I don't necessarily interpret something like that as a beacon for they need that object to come out to help them in their journey. I'm not going to say that that's not accurate, especially in the cases that you've channeled. That certainly may
Sure.
be the case. But for me, I don't really feel like they need objects. I feel like they're well on
Yeah.
their journey,
Yeah.
in and of themselves. But I do feel like it's certainly possible that an object can hold energy, and
Right.
that you can use something as a touch point to connect with somebody, whether it's, well, like for example, you look at some of the more famous mediums. Tyler Henry is one that comes to mind. The Hollywood medium Tyler Henry. He's got a show on Netflix right now, which is quite good, by the way. And he is known to be strong in um, psychometry, where you hold an object and you perceive the energy from that object. But in his case, as a medium, he gets the energy from that object and uses it as a touch point to really connect strongly with the spirit that he's channeling. Other people, I have done some psychometry. In the early days, I used to have people bring objects. There's another medium. Oh, and I don't recall her name, but she likes to hold people's hands when she does a mediumship reading. So
Okay.
that's a way, it's a touch point, a way of kind of enhancing that energetic connection. For me, I'm big into names. I study names. I read books of baby names for pleasure, especially before I meditate. When I'm sleeping, I run through lists of names in my head. So I'm always working to try and really connect strongly with names because I love that. And so for me, I try early on in the reading to get somebody's name. And then once I've tried and I'm close, or maybe I wasn't quite close, whatever, then I'll ask my client, okay, go ahead and tell me the spirit's name. And then when I speak to the spirit by name and I actually address them that way, it always seems to strengthen the connection for me.
Yeah, it strengthened that Wi-Fi signal.
Yeah.
What's been like do you do anything to keep your energy up if you're doing multiple readings in a day? Because it can be draining. What do
Yeah.
you do to kind of offset the drain from doing, even one reading can zap you,
You can.
depending on how it goes. But what's some things that you do? And then when you're done answering that, I kind of wanted to ask for some pointers on what potential clients that want to come get a reading from you or anybody, what are some things that would help them out before the reading or during the reading?
Yeah, very good. All right. What was your question again?
I don't know. Go with the last one.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Well, here we go. Let's back up here. Tim, we got an audience question here. Tim's asking, what's the difference between a reading and a seance? And I guess I'll
Okay.
throw on there, have you done a seance?
Yes. So I have done seances years ago. And a seance is where you and your group are together and you're pulling in the energy together, and the spirit, at least in my experience, the seances that I've done, the spirit or spirits are welcome or invited to speak to anybody in the group. So that's my experience with seances.
The
So,
first
yeah.
part. So, okay. So I think you covered all that there.
Yeah.
And I remember my question now for you.
Go ahead.
How do you
One
deal
at
with...
a time. It was that
Yeah.
throwing in the second question.
I
Really.
know. I got ahead of myself. How do you deal with the drain? How
Oh,
do
the drain.
you
Yeah, that's a good
deal with the
question.
drain from doing
Well,
readings?
obviously not well enough because I couldn't remember your question. But seriously though, it is funny. My memory has not been I don't have a great memory, for years, but especially since I've developed my mediumship skills, I find that information flows in, it flows out. So I rarely hold on, especially for previous sessions, unless it's really like a Roy Ray moment.
Yeah.
Brandon Kent, or Carol Ann. I rarely hold on to information from previous readings. But as far as the drain goes, for me, one of the things is I limit the number of readings that I'll do. So if I'm doing mediumship, in particular for me, mediumship readings drain me more than a psychic reading does. But either way, I limit it to the maximum of 4 readings per day.
Yeah.
And then what I do is I typically will do a reading that's 40 minutes long, and then I'll have a 20-minute gap between readings so that I can kind of, decompress, and if I need to sage or something like that, then I can. And quite frankly, there are plenty of days where I get home from my office and I have to take a nap.
Yeah.
Because it really can be that way. And then on days when I'm doing group readings, because I do a fair amount of readings where I'll be standing up in front of an audience and addressing a group and channeling, lots and lots of spirits from different families. And that, of course, is very energy intensive. And on those days, I will block my whole calendar. So if I'm going to do a group reading, I won't do any other readings that day.
Yeah, and it makes sense. Have
Mhm.
you noticed, like, if you have a head cold, do you have problems with readings, with stuff
Yeah,
coming through?
if that's a good question. Obviously, if I'm not feeling well, then I might not do as good a job. And if that were the case, if I were feeling under the weather and then I gave a subpar reading, I would refund the money or
Yeah,
reschedule or whatever.
yeah,
But you know, you can't win them all.
yeah.
But as far as like other ways that it can affect things, it is kind of interesting. We were talking earlier today about symbols, and one of my symbols, which developed organically, where I was channeling someone who had committed suicide, and
Okay.
the spirit had shot himself in the head, the face, and so I didn't know anything about this spirit, but as I was talking to my client, I said, I'm feeling something sort of tingly in the face. And then they told me what had happened. And then, like the next day, I had it happen again with another spirit, two in a
Yeah,
row. And I
yeah,
had the same experience. So I started to understand that when I feel sort of a tingle in my nose, that is spirit telling me that they are taking responsibility, that their actions contributed to their passing. So for me, a little tingle in my nose is one of my symbols. Well, by golly, allergy season comes around. And if I'm in a channeling session, I feel that little tingle. I really have to stop myself and I have to say, all right, now wait a minute. What is this? Do I really feel like I need to blow my nose or sneeze? Or is this spirit? Okay, it's spirit.
that that would get hard. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have bad allergies too, and it gets a little crazy.
It's not
And
bad, but the beautiful springtime the pollen. Yeah.
oh god, it's been horrible out here in Washington this year.
Mm.
Just thick.
Oh boy.
Um, so we got a question that I'll take here, and someone was commenting from YouTube at Emily, and she was asking, "Will I be a successful entrepreneur?" And I'll just say on the spot that I'll speak for myself that I certainly don't do predictions or tell the future, although tarot cards can help give some insight into what's coming up. So, I don't know that I could on the spot give you an answer to that question. Kelly, do you have anything to add?
Oh, I have an answer. Yeah. So I absolutely feel that you'll be successful in your entrepreneurial duties, your endeavors. But I will say that there's a blind spot that you're not seeing right now. So it feels like there's a particular area that you need to do more research in before you jump in. So you haven't finished all of your research. You've done a lot of research in some areas, but there's this particular area where you've got a hole. I feel like it would be really a good idea for you to speak to others who are in the business that you're considering pursuing.
Right. Get some second, third, fourth
Mhm.
opinions and experience. Great. Awesome. And then Sherry was saying, and I don't know if we'll have time because we got about 10 minutes or so left here. And if you do a reading, please do a medium or a psychic reading on myself. I am open to either one. Thank you. And I'll just ask you, Kelly, what's the difference between a psychic and a medium and a
Yeah,
psychic medium?
yeah, good question. So, a psychic is basically referring to picking up on information outside of the five physical senses. So, this is where you a lot of times hear about the clairs, like in my case. So, I'm an empath. I feel the emotions of others. I'm clairvoyant, so I psychically see images. Clairaudient, so I hear messages. Clairalient, so I get psychic smells. Clairsentient, so I physically feel the energy. That's the one I've been talking about a lot here today. And also claircognizant. Sometimes I just know things. But so a lot of times the clairs are going to refer to just your general psychic information. So a psychic is someone who picks up on information outside of the five physical senses, like I just described. Now, a medium is someone who can use those skills to connect with loved ones who've crossed over. So it's a little fun fact. Every medium is a psychic, but not every psychic is a medium.
Right.
A
No,
lot of people don't know that.
yeah, it's a great way to put it. you
Yeah.
know, because I think there's that that comparison, or the, you know, what the differentiation between them, I think, is lost a lot, and
Yeah.
people just assume psychic medium or
Yeah.
psychic means psychic medium.
Now, I
Um,
will say I always use the terms together because I really love to do both. I do a
Yeah.
lot of psychic readings, which are great for getting insight into the path you're on at the moment. And then obviously today we've been speaking mostly about the mediumship work for connecting with loved ones who
yeah,
crossed over. So not it, you might come across a lot of mediums who, even though they're using psychic skills in their connection with loved ones, that may be the only service that they offer. They may not
right.
offer psychic readings.
Right, exactly. And so, Sherry, you know, about getting a reading, since we're kind of running low on time here, head on over to channelingwhitelight.com, or you can go to portgambleparanormal.com if you're interested in a reading from either or both of us. But go to channelingwhitelight.com and you can check out all the services that Kelly provides. And you do have some events coming up, and I want to make sure and get those in there. Looks like you've got the Haunted America conference coming up.
Well, so that's one that was kind of in the works, but I can't say that that's definitely going to come to fruition. So I'm
Okay.
not going to really advertise my events at the moment, but that was very kind of you to include it, and I definitely appreciate that you mentioned my website. I've
Yeah.
got another thing that I would like to mention, if you don't mind, is I do have a YouTube channel. Um,
That's channeling white light.
Yes, the youtube.com/channeling white light. And I actually publish live actual excerpts of my readings.
Oh wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, I've got some full length readings published, some group readings published, and then I've got lots of excerpts where I'll just take a little snippet. In fact,
Yeah. Oh,
The
really?
Carol
That's
Ann,
on
I
there?
caught that one on video.
Oh, that's cool. I'll have to check
Yeah.
that out. Now for more of the paranormal part of things, have you ever investigated with a team? Have you ever gone out to a historical location, you know, and to investigate a place?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I was really actively developing my psychic skills, that especially when I lived in England, that time when I was attending University of Kent at Canterbury, studying parapsychology, I also mentored under professional psychic Jo Wynn when I lived over there, and she's amazing. In fact, she's still a mentor to me. We Zoom talk regularly, but she took me on a trip to Culver's, and that's a historic site there that's known to be very haunted. And I heard the baby crying. That's a legend there. I heard it clear as day. So that was one of my earliest historic experiences at a historic site. There was another situation where I went on a little ghost hunt that was very informal. This was, again, I was in college at the time, and some friends took me to a dorm, not a dorm, a sorority house where a young lady had killed herself, and they were all about the dramatic, it was all dark, and we had a candle, and we walked around in every room, and I was able to identify, I'm feeling a strong energy in this room and that room, and it turns out that this room is where she had lived, and that room is where she had killed herself.
Wow.
I also
Yeah.
had a situation just a couple years ago, right before the pandemic, where my husband and I went on a trip to Knoxville, Tennessee, and we stayed in the historic Reed House Hotel, and beautiful hotel. They've redone it. It's really stunning. And we ended up staying on the same floor, quite close to an extremely haunted room. And I felt a spirit in the middle of the night, and I immediately put up my no, don't bother me, I'm sleeping shield. But then the next day, I asked about it, and that's when we learned that haunted room was down the hall, and they let us in for a tour. And while I was there, I did pick up on the energy of four spirits, and I described later to one of the people who worked there that I had picked up on four spirits, and he said, "Oh, that's amazing, because we had a ghost hunting team, and they came up with four spirits." So that was a validation. And then also I caught a photo of a ghost on camera.
Right.
In the mirror, I was just taking pictures of all the different spaces. And then later I went back and looked, and in the reflection of the mirror, you can see just on the side, the outline of of someone in a trench coat. And of
Oh,
course, no one there had a trench coat. So it was the trench coat ghost.
that's
Yeah.
cool. Well, and a trench coat's pretty unmistakable. Like
Mhm.
saying yes, that is a trench coat.
Yeah.
It's pretty
Yeah.
apparent as to what it is. Very interesting. So
Yeah.
so you've been to some places.
Yeah.
You know, um, so what's been like? Um, we're getting a little low on time here, but what's been?
Darn.
I know it goes by quick.
Yeah.
What's been like the best rewarding experience that you've had in your work so far? If you can point to one thing,
Yeah.
what's been like the most rewarding? Was it a particular reading that just lifted you up so high, or
Yeah.
what's been kind of like the most rewarding thing in doing this work?
Well, so many times I'm really very thankful that this is the case, but so many times I have people tell me that I have brought them inner peace that they didn't have for years. And so, it's hard to beat that in terms of
Yeah.
like really having a rewarding moment. I can think of one in particular where somebody let me know that I saved their life because their grief was so intense, and that she and actually a friend of hers as well were both intending to commit suicide. And that the reading with me had helped her understand that her son was okay, that her son was still with her, and that her son wanted her to carry on and to live a life, to enjoy life in a way that he wasn't given that choice. He wasn't able. And, afterwards, after the reading, she, like a couple months later, she let me know that I had saved the life of her and her friend through that reading.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
It's got to be like, it's just humbling to,
Mm.
I think to hear, and I haven't anybody say that to me, but
Yet.
it's very humbling. Yeah, it's very humbling, right? Because then it's like
Yeah.
it makes you remember that you have a purpose,
Yeah.
and your purpose is to give those messages to those who need it, and those that are maybe they're not looking for it, but they may need it. And so very, very cool.
Yeah.
What's one good tip that you could give to all the listeners out there who have never had a reading before, whether it be a psychic reading or a mediumship
Yeah.
reading?
This was the question that we failed to answer earlier.
Yeah, I think so.
My
What?
memory worked this
Yeah,
time.
there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's like one good tip you could give
Yeah.
somebody to help make a successful
Yeah.
reading for
So,
them?
what I would say is try to be flexible about your expectations. So, it's not that you shouldn't have any expectations. If you're seeing a quality evidential medium, you should expect to hear things that are details, that are specific, that only or that there's no way that the medium could have known or Googled, heaven forbid. So you should absolutely expect that, but try not to hone in strongly on it's got to be this one thing. I've got to hear this one word that was the key word with my wife who's passed, and if I don't hear that, then mediums are fake, right? So try to be a little open-minded and flexible about what you receive, but it's okay to talk to your loved ones ahead of time about, I'd really like to hear about this, or this, if possible, and try to make it a little flexible. So, like for example, I was doing a group reading. It was a week ago today, actually. I did a group reading, and I was picking up on. I said to my client, "There's a special song that I'm picking up on that's very meaningful, and I feel like I want to talk about the word night." Turns out that he and his band members had played a song in the still of the night, and his mother had walked in and said it was so beautiful she thought it was the radio. They ended up later playing that song at her funeral, and so it was a very significant detail. But what was even more significant is that he then told me that he had asked her to bring up that song in the still of the night in the reading.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. So having a few different things that, mom, talk about that song, talk about this hobby, talk about that, you
Yeah.
know, sign that you gave me.
Yeah. Excellent advice. I mean, yeah, to be open-minded and flexible, and I don't know about you, but a lot of my readings, I think people walk away from going, "What in the world was that?" And then 2 weeks later, they email me and say, "Oh my gosh, I asked this person in my family and this
Yeah.
person, and here's the picture of the person, and
Yes.
there's and da 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 da
Yes.
da da." Da." That happens to
Yeah,
me a lot.
a lot of times things will make sense later. Yep.
Yeah, it's funny how it works, and I think that's just, spirit making you work for it. Um, giving you a good
Sometimes those are the,
workout.
sometimes those are the strongest validations, though,
Yeah,
with the third
exactly.
party validation.
Yeah. Gosh, well, time's flown by. This has been so fun.
Yeah. Thanks so much for
Everybody,
having me.
oh, thank you for coming on. I'm glad I met you at the Oregon Ghost Conference, and
Yeah.
you're all the way across the country. But
Mhm.
everyone listening out there, be sure to go to channelingwhitelight.com so you can see all the services and find out everything Kelly's got going on. And be sure to go to her YouTube channel, youtube.com/channeling white light. I'm getting tongue tied here. But we've had so much fun on the show. Next week, I've got psychic medium and author Christina Bloom from the show Be the Change right here on WLTKDB. And Kelly, I leave every show with a toast, and I'm adding a little bit more to it tonight, that it's a weekly reminder for everybody that the past is history and the future's a mystery, but today's a gift because it's the present. And we all get tied up in our lives, right? We all, in the hustle and bustle of being adults, that we forget to be present. So here's your reminder, folks, everybody out there, to take some time each week. Maybe it's tonight when you listen to this show or whenever. Make sure to be where you are, be there in the moment, take stock in what you've got there, be with the people you're with, hug everyone that you're with, hug everyone else virtually a little bit longer. And I'll add tonight also that everybody out there in the paranormal, maybe you're experiencing things in your home, maybe you're on a team and you go looking for spirits, paranormal investigation. Just remember this, folks, and it's easy to forget. So here's a reminder: ghosts were people once too. And just remember that, and it gives you such a different perspective, and a good perspective that you can take with you when you're dealing with paranormal activity or you're investigating. Just remember that ghosts were people once too. We got a few people saying thanks, sharing, great to see you. That Thanks for watching, you guys, really
Bye.
appreciate it. And Tony, thanks, man. Good night. Interesting topic. Wish I was as sensitive. You are, man. We all are. You just got to recognize it and find it. But with that, Kelly, thanks so much. We'll have to have you on
Yeah,
again and get an update on your work in the
love to.
future. And I'll be sure to check out your YouTube channel. So that's channelingwhitelight.com. Go check it out, folks. And we're here on the Paranormal Pete Show. I'm your host, Peter Urbea, for episode 67 on WLTKDB.com. Be well and take care. And thanks again, Kelly.
Thank you. Bye.